Welcome. Today, we're very lucky to have a return guest, Liz Wagner, who is on the Jewish Community Relations Council here in the Tampa Bay area and a Jewish activist. And as we said in our previous episode, she formerly was a feminist leader in Westchester County, edited a feminist newsletter, and she's very involved with Jewish affairs and Israeli affairs. And we're going to ask her views on some news and developments in Israel and Gaza and the Middle East and in American politics related to that. And I want to thank you for coming. Welcome, Liz. Welcome back. I guess I'd like to start today with since we last spoke, I have a picture up above of President Biden with Chuck Schumer, who was the Senate Majority Leader. Senator Schumer made a speech attacking the Netanyahu government in Israel, essentially saying Netanyahu had to be overthrown, blaming Israel for all the problems in Gaza. And he originally said he didn't clear it with the White House. Then he said, well, the White House may have read a draft, but whatever. It clearly was a coordinated operation, in my opinion, the culmination of a series of other attacks on Israel from prominent Jewish leaders, politicians, including Bernie Sanders, Jamie Raskin, Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, and then culminating with Senator Schumer. I wonder what your reaction is to that.
Well, thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me. I wanted to just emphasize, I think, before I say anything further, just that I am appearing, I'm just an individual Jew out here. I'm not anybody. I am active in my local community. I am a member of my local Jewish Community Relations Council. I do serve on the board of the local federation of Florida's Gulf Coast. But I am speaking on my own just as an individual. I want people to talk about these issues.
I agree with you. None of this reflects the official positions of any organization that you've ever been involved with. This is just your personal opinion.
Yes, yes. So, so as far as Schumer's address and what's been coming out of the Biden administration, I mean, I do believe, Schumer made his speech, but I think it was certainly coordinated to whatever extent with the Biden administration. They got themselves a Jew to put out some of this criticism of Israel, unfair criticism of Israel, unrealistic ideas about Israel. And I think the Jewish community should, be well aware of this and be very skeptical of what is going on. That, people were so enthusiastic when the Biden administration came out with their plan for fighting anti-Semitism. Of course, they had as one of their advisors to that plan, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. That was bizarre. They've since, booted them from that initiative because after October 7th, CARE leaders came out to support Hamas. So, to me, that anti-Semitism plan was, I think actually it was put out as a way to, soften up the Jewish community, because down the road they knew that, other stuff was coming to move. They were planning a move on Israel.
I agree with you 100% on that. And they've often done this good cop, bad cop routine, always pushing the ball down the field in ways that are anti-Israel. From the very beginning, it's just been increasingly anti-Israel. I'm sure because they thought right at the beginning they couldn't show their cards, but their plan, in my opinion, all along was to impose a two-state solution before the next election, sort of the way that Bill Clinton got Oslo before his, well, he was finished, but Al Gore was running for
Right,
election,
yes,
just in case they lose, which they're going to try not to do by hook or
right.
by crook. But just in case, this will be a done deal and you won't be able to undo it.
Mhm.
Speaking of that, I agree with your analysis 100%. In fact, if you actually look at what they did with the Ukraine, getting all the Jewish leaders to support the war in the Ukraine, which was very bad for Israel. Israel had to move ammunition that had been stored in a depot for Israel to use in an emergency and ship it to the Ukraine. So then they had a shortage of ammunition when the Gaza war started, and Biden was able to hold up ammunition to slow them down. So, I mean, it is strategically, tactically, politically, diplomatically, it was anti-Israel to be involved in the Ukraine. And of course, getting Israel involved in sending help to the Ukraine angered Vladimir Putin, who was being pretty neutral about Israel. Yes,
Yeah,
he supported the Palestinians, but he'd been nice to Israel.
it had
And it's
been,
like it upset him. So
yes.
that harmed Israel in terms of its support from the United States, harmed Israel in terms of support for Russia. This isn't the action of a friend, in my opinion. However, that said, initially, he did supply some aid to Israel in the early days because it would just look too bad after there's a massacre by his buddies in Hamas that he would do nothing and let everyone be killed. That said, let's go to the news story, which I think confirms this theory, which you could call a conspiracy theory. But where is my share? Wrong screen. This always happens. Let's try it again. We just had it before. Let's try it again. Let's try this. There we go. So this is something interesting that just happened today. It was right, or it was reported
Yesterday,
yesterday, and I just read about it today.
yeah,
Israeli strike kills 7 aid workers in Gaza.
yeah,
Um, Now, Netanyahu has apologized. The generals have apologized. Unintentionally hit innocent people. Uh, Nobody had these headlines when aid supplied by the United States through Jordan was reaching the Palestinians, and the parachutes of aid crushed 5 people and killed them. That wasn't scandal. So it's a war zone. Dangerous things happen. But the news is very anti-Israel on this. I'm wondering what do you think the meaning of this might be?
well, I will say, even though there's been a negative reaction, I don't feel it was as hysterical, let's say, as what happened after Hamas claimed Israel had bombed a hospital uh, back in October or November. Um, so it's a little more controlled. It seems like, you know, Israel may actually have done this. I don't know that it's been confirmed yet. You know, in the
I
case of
think they admitted it.
they did,
Yeah.
they did. Okay. So, hey, it's really unfortunate, but it is a war zone. And it's, I don't know what the circumstances were, where these people were, how this happened. And it's terrible. I mean, what can you say? But of course, it is a war zone, and also the whole aid situation. I think we have to look at why, was it necessary for those people to be there in the first place? I mean, there's this whole narrative going on that Israel is somehow starving out the Gazans, and yet um, Israel has been showing daily that it's allowing in up to 80% more food aid in trucks now than it was before October 7th. So, there's a lot of, you know, vectors going on there with the food aid.
Well, my own view is that I wish Israel were allowed to starve them into submission. I've never heard of a war where you provide aid and food and supplies to your enemy and
That's
expect
true
them to
too.
surrender.
Yeah.
In addition, I think putting American charities in the middle of the crossfire is
Mhm.
using them as human shields. The United States is saying, don't worry, Hamas, we'll protect you. We'll put our American aid agents, and Jose Andres is a chef in Washington who owns some actually a good restaurant. I used to eat at Haleo, but he's very politically involved, very tied to the Democratic Party. And this is all the hallmarks of a political operation to further isolate Israel. For all we know, and I don't have any evidence, it's possible that they were sent out. Let's hope some of them get killed, and then we'll have martyrs, and Israel look bad, and they'll have to back down some more because they care so much about bad publicity. Apparently, no matter what the bad publicity is for Hamas or Iran or some of these other countries, it doesn't matter, or the United States for that matter. But if the Israel gets bad publicity, they have to stop. Well, again, the United States never would have won World War II. It never would have defeated Saddam Hussein. It never would have defeated the Taliban before Joe Biden put them back, if bad publicity had been the issue. So it's interesting that this is the new criterion of how you should fight a war, and that Israel goes along with it. Again, I think it's working the way Biden wanted it, to show Israel as weak, dependent, and apologetic instead of vigorous, strong, and determined. But let's go to the next. And I do want to let you speak, but I don't want
Yeah.
you to get in trouble. So
Yeah.
let's go to the next
Well, no,
headline.
I was just going to say that sometimes I feel that if Israel got more support and backing from, say, the American Jewish community, then it wouldn't feel so pressured to cave into these kinds of demands. I mean, they agreed to have Chef, uh, this group go in there because I'm sure they're trying to be as cooperative as possible with the food aid. But was it a smart thing to do? I mean, he's delivered food to, like, with the hurricane in Puerto Rico. He's delivered food in those kinds of situations, disasters. But in this kind of a war zone, I mean, you know,
Well, that's a good point you make. As you can see, the most powerful Jewish senator, it looks in this picture to be joined at the hip to the President of the United States. So is he defending the interest of American Jews, of Israeli Jews, of New Yorkers who he represents supposedly in the Senate? Or is he defending Joe Biden? And, it reminds me, I made this film about the Second World War, and Rabbi Stephen Wise and other Jewish leaders who felt they had to protect Franklin Delano Roosevelt
yeah.
against political attacks because he wasn't doing more to save Jews from Hitler. And they did such a good job at that Hitler got away with killing millions and millions of people who might have been saved if they'd done what you suggest and taken a strong line and said, hey, Joe, you know what? I can't support you on this one. I don't think it'll go down with my constituents. I don't think it'll go down with the people in my state. And I don't think it's the right thing to do for America. So on this one, I'm just going to follow my conscience and say you should fully back Israel and do all that Israel can do, help Israel to win the war as quickly as possible and have a decisive victory over Islamic fundamentalism. But that's not what he's saying. And that's not, I agree with you. I haven't heard a single Jewish leader come out. And there was a Conference of Presidents letter, but there hasn't been much Jewish outcry about the Biden administration's savage anti-Israel attacks.
And
So let's
really
go to,
attacks on Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, this with Schumer coming out and calling for, that there has to be elections in Israel. I mean, who are we to tell Israelis It's time for elections and you need to get rid of your prime minister. I mean, it was outrageous.
Well, he obviously thinks Israel is a dependency of the United States and has no independence, despite the Israeli Declaration of Independence, which again harms Israel, because in the eyes of the world, such statements weaken the ability of the government and of the country to act when need be. It's all cutting Israel down to size, and it's anti-Israel. An interesting point you made about attacking Netanyahu. I believe that's also a game where they go, well, we're not against Israel. We're just against Netanyahu.
Oh,
Well, except Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel. He was elected by the Israelis. And that's like saying, we're not anti-British in World War II. We're just against Churchill and the way he's fighting the war. And he shouldn't have done that firebombing of Dresden. And he shouldn't do all that bombing of civilians in Germany and so forth and so on, because, that's not right. And we don't approve of that. I don't believe I ever heard Franklin Roosevelt say that. I
no,
don't
but
believe I
plus,
heard the Senate Majority Leader say that, even in that case. I mean, to a country that's supposedly your ally, to
yeah,
undercut and denigrate them.
and they're also, they're doing it in such a way, they're putting up this false, they're framing it under this false idea that somehow the Israeli people are not behind Benjamin Netanyahu's conduct of this war. The Israeli people are fully behind him in terms of the war. And they're just really just using such cynical machinations to try and undermine Israel. And the whole reason why they want so badly to get rid of Netanyahu is because Netanyahu fights fiercely for Israel. And as much as sometimes he does give in to what the United States wants, he also stands up proudly and fiercely for Israel. And they don't like that.
Well, well, I agree with you. I don't think he stands up quite as much as he
No,
should, but maybe
no.
he's not able to. To me, he's always been a little too weak.
Yeah, yes.
But let me go to the next article, because I think this also is very interesting. Oh God, I did it again. It's so funny. I don't understand, but we'll just leave all this in and do it. Here we go. Okay, let's go to this article by Carolyn Glick. This is
Oh,
from the
yeah,
Jewish News Service, because obviously we both read it, but
yes.
it says more or less what we're saying. Uh, so Israel not only has to fight on a front against Gaza, Israel has to fight against the Biden administration's pressure and diplomatic campaign. And
Yes. This is,
using hostages. Not only they use human shields in Gaza to turn people against Israel, but they're using the hostages in Israel to turn the Israeli people against the Israeli government. And here are some of the tents
yeah,
that
and in this article, I mean, Glick, she cites they captured some WhatsApp discussions where this activist, Dror, I think his name is, um, is actually, working with Biden administration officials to coordinate this four-part plan for, getting Netanyahu out. I mean, they are trying to engineer a coup in Israel. I mean, just flat out, that's what's going on.
well, that
And
reminds
and
me.
I think Jewish leadership in the United States, why aren't they jumping up and down, screaming? Or doing something? I mean, I'm not a politician. I don't know how to get those kinds of things done, but you need to be doing something. There's something very wrong going on here.
I agree with you. In fact, it reminds me of the famous story in World War One, where the Germans sent Vladimir Lenin in a sealed train into Russia to make a coup to get Russia out of the First World War. And it was successful. Now, what was the long-term result? Of course, it was 70 years of communism. But for the Germans, the result in the end was Russia occupied half of Germany for many decades. So I think you want to be a little careful with these plots because they may sometimes have unintended consequences. But I agree with you. I think, you know, some of it is, as we say, I think many Jewish leaders and many Jewish donors, because obviously the way the Jewish organizations run, they're not elected. It's the biggest donors call the shots.
But why, I mean, I don't get it. What do these donors think they're getting by, allowing this kind of harm to come to Israel? And by the way, you know, uh, uh, people always think in terms of, well, is it good for the United States? Is it good for, what's good for Israel is often and usually good for the United States. So why not just support Israel? It's a loyal ally.
Well,
What are we defending on the other side?
from
Arab,
that
Arab
perspective,
and Muslim egos? I mean,
well,
their own
Liz,
colonial ambitions in the
from
Middle East?
from that perspective, what if that's exactly why Israel must be punished? Because America is supposed to lose, that the people in charge now have a mission, which is to weaken America. So
Well,
anything strong connected with America must be destroyed.
well, of course. I mean, that's the whole thing that's going on underneath all this is the the goal of the global left to weaken the United States. I mean, that's, the great empire that must be brought to its knees, and we're going to do it by first destroying Israel, a useful and effective ally of the United States. And by harming Israel, we can, strike a blow against the empire of the United States. I mean, that's what all of that is about.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that's why Israel has been targeted, because the myth of Jewish power, look, if we can do it to the Jewish state, we can do it to any state. And other countries are going, wait a minute, I don't want to be too close to the United States. So just as
That's why it's
turning Afghanistan over to the Taliban, whoa, what kind of ally is that? Et cetera. This is the same type of thing where you turn on your friends to send a message. Don't get near the United States.
well, that's the message. I mean, and why do they think that's good for the United States? I mean,
Well, which side are our leaders on? That's the real question.
well, yeah.
What do they want? What is their ultimate goal? Remember, these same people with the Hamas nicks, as they're called, they chant death to Israel and death to America in the
Yes,
same breath.
yes.
So, you know,
So
that's they
why does Biden think we should be helping them?
and they say Israel is the little Satan and America is the big Satan.
Mhm.
So you know, in other words, they're very clear about their intentions. I
Mhm.
mean, what their rhetoric and their actions match 100%.
Yes.
Yet these are the people that Chuck Schumer wishes to side with. It's sort of curious, you know, without coming up with some sort of, as you said, cynical plan that might explain it in the most
Well,
ghastly way.
yes. I mean, I think, yes, they have good intentions. They think they're, you know, uh, speaking up for those downtrodden Palestinians who just can't help themselves but have to murder Israelis. Um, they think they're doing something good. That's what their, I don't know, good leftist consciousness is telling them. And yet, you know, it's impossible. That's not, I mean, in the United States, solving the problem of racism, you don't do that by funneling billions of dollars to white supremacists so they can set up an all-white state. And we shouldn't be funneling billions of dollars to Arab and Muslim supremacists in the Middle East so they can set up their Judenrein state. You know, it's the same thing. Why don't people on the left recognize what they're doing in the Middle East by supporting what is fundamentally an Arab and Muslim supremacist cause, Palestinian cause? That is what it is has always been. Uh, you know, they should see it as fundamentally against what they themselves claim to be about, you know, and yet they're completely blind to that.
Well, it reminds me of when the Stalinists in the United States wanted to keep the United States out of World War II because Stalin had his pact with Hitler. And they encouraged, in fact, they encouraged the American First movement of that period. And they encouraged people to be draft dodgers and all the rest. They were anti-war during World War II. Then after Russia was attacked, of course, they flipped 180 degrees and became allies of the United States. Let's go on to the next slide, which if I can get this to work. This is demonstrations, more than 1,000 people outside a Teaneck synagogue over the Israel-Gaza. Well, this is from the New Jersey newspaper, NorthJersey.com. Here we have some. And there were also pro-Israeli demonstrators on the other side. So at least they weren't given free rein, but you have to wonder what were they doing there in the first place? What's your reaction to that?
Well, the reason they were there was in the synagogue, they were holding a fundraiser for Zaka, which is the organization that attends to the dead in emergency situations. They make sure the bodies of the dead are handled appropriately, and not just for Jews, for Muslims too. There are Muslim members of Zaka. And so they were having a fundraiser for Zaka in this synagogue, and I guess word got out, and the Israel haters decided to show up and have a demonstration against Israel because this fundraiser was taking place in that synagogue. And it's terrible. I mean, they look for any opportunity they can to simply scream about how much they hate Israel, scream about all the lies they tell about Israel, that it's committing genocide, that it's in apartheid, it's, all the garbage, that it's occupying Gaza, all the garbage that they say. And I mean, it's getting scary because they are just getting more and more wound up, gathering more and more people. The news media, is not helping because, there's so much biased reporting going on. And it's scary to see what's going on.
Do you think it's actually all just spontaneous, or do you think perhaps like Black Lives Matter, which my understanding was worked with Palestinian organizers in planning its protests with Antifa? Do you think perhaps this is part of the Biden administration saying, let's increase the pressure on American Jews to make them too scared, to do anything?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I can't speculate on whether Biden administration operatives would be involved in this. I mean, it's possible, but I wouldn't speculate on that. I think that the momentum right now is with the anti-Israel protesters. They've got their people are all fired up, and if they can find an opportunity to get a bunch of people to show up and scream about Israel, they'll do it.
Why do you think they're going to stop with screaming? I mean, if you look at Black Lives Matter, that ended up with whole an Antifa, you know, cities being burned down, and in Washington things being burned down, and why do you think it's going to stop with peaceful protests?
Well, so far, they haven't gotten too much out of hand. There has been occasional violence. Uh, the one guy was killed in California early on. There's been, incidents on campuses of some violence. So far, it hasn't broken out into, widespread violence, looting, rioting, that kind of thing. Um, Hopefully it won't go in that direction, but I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna rule that out. These people are perfectly capable of doing that if they want to, when they want to. They just haven't gone for it yet.
But as you said, they've already killed somebody in California, and yet Jewish organizations didn't make, and I'm afraid and ashamed to say I don't remember his name, the victim who was killed by the pro-Hamas people.
Yeah.
His name is not as well known as George Floyd. He
No,
hasn't gotten the
also,
publicity. Things aren't being renamed after him. There's not endless references to him by every elected politician. I don't know if Chuck Schumer or Adam Schiff, who's from California, or anyone else has introduced a congressional resolution to memorialize him. What are the Jewish community leaders doing to help American Jews who are now facing pogroms, which, by the way, Al Sharpton, the first one in my lifetime. I mean, until then, I'd never heard of such a thing in the United States. Now it seems to be an everyday occurrence. Now it's like Eastern Europe or Poland or wherever my
well,
grandparents came from. It's
not quite.
unbelievable. And yet this is accepted. This is acceptable behavior. There's no demands for crackdowns and deportations and long prison terms and forfeiture of assets and so forth, and shutting down of the organizations. I mean, compare that to how the January 6th protesters have been treated.
Well, um, I think part of the problem is that the Jewish community is doesn't make, doesn't get its passions inflamed, to demand that more be done, or to inspire other people to come out and join us and push back. I mean, that's always been a problem of the Jewish community, that people, there's like this habitual um, distancing from the Jewish community. I don't want to just say, sure, there's anti-Semitism, but I think, I think we have a lot more friends now than we ever did, and people who are willing to stand up with us. But I feel that the Jewish community is um, not organized, and its leaders are not leading us to get out there and make the noise that has to be made. Um, we don't have the fire going, um, that I don't know how to, you need a certain fire to get people to act and react, to get politicians to say, whoa, we better do something. I mean, if all we're going to do is make polite statements to the media, then they're going to just say, yeah, well, all you got to do is tell the Jews is we love Israel. And that's all you got to do to handle the Jews. Just tell them you love Israel and we feel really bad about the Holocaust, and the Jews will walk away and not make any noise. We
As
need,
people are actually being terrorized in suburban communities. Incredible. But
right.
I think you're
But but I
100%
but I
correct.
do I do put a lot of the responsibility on the Jewish community must act. If we want people to do something, the Jewish community must act and make the noise.
I
We
agree
can't
with you.
just complain among ourselves.
Okay, well, hopefully somebody will watch this and put you in charge of a major Jewish organization. Let me go now to our screens because I'm getting the hang of it. Now, this is just to show this is not just the United States. Same thing is happening in Toronto. This is a worldwide phenomenon, which indicates it's coordinated. That's all. It's not just happening here. And then. Uh, Let's go.
Oh,
What's happening at the UN in this context with mobs and protests and threats of violence?
oh, yeah,
This was striking to me. France is going to advance a Security Council resolution calling for a Gaza ceasefire and two states.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
just give these people who say death to America, death to Israel, who are going out like the Ku Klux Klan night riders, terrorizing people in their homes,
right,
and they seem like reasonable people. Let's give them a state now after they've massacred 1,200 people, injured
right.
5,000 more. Fighting
That's
like
exactly what we should do.
give them humanitarian aid, help them out. Give them a break. That's France's position, which, by the way, is a country where you know people are being killed by Islamic terrorists. Not only they burned down, in my opinion, Notre Dame Cathedral a little while ago, but they kill priests, they kill teachers, they kill old ladies.
They just
And
arrested a guy who they said had actually was planning to attack Notre Dame. Just
again,
just read that the other day. Yeah.
so I mean, they're not even giving up on that. Uh, Yet we should appease them. We should collaborate with them. We should help them because then they'll see that we're not mean Islamophobes. And it's interesting. So uh, the story from France is I think this is going to happen, and I would be very surprised if the Biden administration vetoes it.
Here's the thing. Again, this is something is the Jewish leadership? Where is the Jewish leadership, to fight this and to come out and say, this is insane. Hamas just did what it did. Palestinians support Hamas. They support what Hamas did. The vast majority of them. You don't build a state on that. I mean, and Jewish leadership, Jewish organizations, they just refuse to come out and say what is so obvious. Like I said to you before, we would never in the United States is the way to address white supremacism, to funnel billions of dollars to white supremacists so they can set up a whites only state someplace, on the border of some black city or some Native American reservation. No, no, but in the Middle East, sure, why not? Because there's never been a problem with people attacking Jews before. Why don't we just set up, funds, funnel billions of dollars in money so these people can set up a Judenrein state where they say, no Jew will be allowed to live here. We hate the Jews. They talk about it every day. It's taught in their schools. Yes, this is exactly what we need. There's 21 Arab states. We need a 22nd Arab state in this world. And Israel will just have to learn to live with it
and it's
because
sort of funny.
we're doing a good thing.
Biden claims he's fighting anti-Semitism by creating an anti-Semitic state in
Exactly.
Gaza.
That's why. I mean, let us finally let the Jewish community, you know, finally say, you are just full of it. We've had enough of your bullshit. Stop gaslighting us. And yet I wait and wait, for Jewish leaders. What do they do? They're like, I mean, they're just like Stephen Wise during World War II. He was so enthralled, being next to power, being next to FDR. He never wanted to really, to put pressure on FDR. You know, and I feel like our Jewish leadership is like in the same compromised position. They want us to always get invited to the right events, the right parties, you know. So let's not say too much. But meanwhile, Israel's getting screwed, and we will be screwed too. We are. We're already seeing it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We have one more screen, which was a very interesting article, which was, and you disagree with this one, so we can have an interesting conversation. This was in Tablet by Tony Fells. It says, Jew hatred is not the problem at Penn or other universities. Radicalism is. Understanding the true problem is the only way to land on an effective solution. And what he says is the anti-Semitism isn't really what's going on. What you have is leftists using anti-Semites to promote their own agenda. Now, you told me you disagree with that, so if you could comment.
Well, I mean, the way I understood the article, you know, him saying that anti-Semitism is not the problem, I think that obscures the fact that all the Palestinianism is anti-Semitism. And so to just argue that anti-Semitism is not the problem obscures all of that. That's what, you know, that's basically how I see it. I just don't see how you can separate anti-Semitism from that. It's as if he was trying to say like somehow, well, traditional right-wing anti-Semitism is bad, but when it's coming from the left this way, it's not as bad. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think you're right, and I think you've actually coined a very good slogan, and I hope someone will pick up on it and put it on a bumper sticker. Palestinianism is anti-Semitism because that would go to the phony anti-Semitism of the Biden administration. You can't be pro-Hamas and against anti-Semitism, and I think you've said that beautifully. With Palestinianism is anti-Semitism.
I mean,
what the author
is. We just have to say, you know, like the whole idea for a Palestinian state, it was never anything but a strategy for undoing Israel. I mean, I said this earlier, you know, that's all it is. And by now we have all the proof we need that the Palestinians, as Einat Wolf has said, it's not that they want a state. They want Jews not to have a state. That is what they're about. And it is about time that the United States start facing that reality, and the American Jewish community especially start dealing with that reality. Okay, if all really what your bottom line is, you don't really want a state, you just don't want Israel to be there, then no, I don't support a Palestinian state. If that's what it's for, no. That's just a recipe for a forever war. And it should be confronted. No more nonsense about this.
Well, thank you. I think that's a good note to end on. I think you've just said something very insightful here, because if you change the way you look at the situation, perhaps it can be seen more clearly and for what is really going on. And I look forward maybe in a little while to coming back, because it doesn't seem that this is going away anytime soon, to hear your analysis of whatever the future may hold in the next couple of weeks. So thank you very much, Liz Wagner from Tampa Bay, and we'll see you again soon, I hope.
Okay, thanks.